to Out of
We're live.
Paranoia.
We're live.
Whoops.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome back to Wine on an Empty Stomach. We are 1,000 Eyes in One. I'm Tanya.
I'm Nikki, and we're so excited to talk to you guys today about Dread Nation. We've been waiting so long to do this book.
Yes,
I can't wait.
One of my all-time favorite reads, period.
That's so good. So good.
I'm just opening up so I can see comments real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So, where do you want to start? Can you give a quick summary?
Mm-hmm. A quick summary. So, yeah, let's do that. Dread Nation is... I don't even know where to start besides I just want to talk about how awesome it is. Because the concept itself is really fun and crazy. Yeah. So at the very end of the Civil War, all of a sudden the dead get up and they start turning into people and killing and basically eating the soldiers on the battlefield, which sends the entire country into a zombie apocalypse.
Yes.
And
and it ends the war. It
ends the war. Well, actually, it's not true because the war isn't officially over, which we find out later in the book. But, for all intents and purposes, it ends the war.
Well, it changes the war from being between the North and the South to being everyone against the zombies.
Yes.
And our protagonist, Jane, is born, was it 2 days before the dead start to rise? So she lives her whole life with zombies.
With zombies being a real danger, danger. And the way that the country decides to cope with it is by sending Native Americans and the Black people who were, at this point, not slaves anymore, but not exactly free, to, let's call them re-education combat schools to train them to fight the dead in defense of, the white people.
So ladies basically have female attendants and the men have their own, I don't know if they call them attendants for the men, but essentially they're there to protect them from zombies and also to protect their virtue. And so our lead character, Jane
McKean,
is at one of the combat schools, the best one, known as Miss Preston's. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl. Thanks for joining.
Why did we choose this book, Nikki?
We chose this book because it's awesome. We chose this book because as soon as we started reading it, it was just clear from the very beginning that, one, the concept was super cool, two, the writing was incredible, and Jane McKean is such an awesome character. She's not necessarily like your fearless protagonist. She's not a perfect hero. She's very, very much flawed. And I think our Petty saw her petty and respected her. She's great. She's great. She's unapologetic. She tells you from the beginning, she's like, I'm a liar. And I had to lie because this is how I learned to survive in this world. And, she's also restless. And super she's restless and she's brave, and she's had to learn from a very young age to survive and to be a survivor. So I mean, those are a couple of the reasons why I think we chose the book. And it's one that, like, even when you reread it, it's just as good, and that for me makes the book magical.
I really liked that. I really liked that it wasn't a book about just like trying to escape zombies.
Oh yeah, zombies are definitely like a background character. They're not like front and center. It's not all about the zombies. They're
a real threat. They're definitely a real threat, but the story itself isn't just like, how after a while Walking Dead just became like we're trekking through the woods and we're hiding from zombies. I didn't get that at all.
Yeah, it didn't become that. Like you have the sense that by the time this book is taking place, they have a handle on what's going on. Like they've got a system. They know that the cities are defensible to a certain degree. They've figured out how to kind of form communities to survive. And you know, for the most part, I guess the combat schools are effective methods of creating defense, depending on where the people are being sent. Like you said, Miss Preston's is like the best school because they don't all they're not all that good, and they don't all take killing shamblers as seriously. But you know, it's a world in which they have kind of established an order while trying to figure out how to grow and how to maintain communities that are zombie proof.
And at this point, they feel like, at least, especially in the northern states, that they kind of have control over it. You get the impression that, sorry, I dropped a notebook. You get the impression that, well, they're giving people the impression that everything is pretty much safe, that you might get the occasional shambler, but you know, we're not overrun or anything. And of course we find out that's a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because of that, also the attendants start to become more of a status thing instead of for real safety. But Jane sneaks out at night and kills shamblers on the road and saves people. And so she knows the truth, and she knows that they're lying.
Yeah, so this is all taking around up to, well, the first part of the book is taking a place around Baltimore, the city of Baltimore, and that's where they're based. And it's really fun because it's like when you find out that Jane is afraid of horses because their horses no longer exist in that part of the country because they were all eaten by zombies. And so they are transported back and forth from the city to Miss Preston's by like this carriage that they call ponies, and they're basically like they're loud, like type cars that are reinforced and allow some degree of protection. But while she's going into the city, she can see that there are definitely shamblers kind of, you know, ambling around. They're not all gone. It's just getting from one gated and safe community to the next.
One of the things that kind of stood out was when she saw that little girl shambler and realized she looked fresh. Like that was one of the first signs. I mean, other than the fact that they're just around in general, but seeing a fresh one. And then when the Edgar sisters go missing, and you find out that they've been overrun, but everyone keeps it hush hush. And then the final, like, you know, something is really bad. I just saw Cheryl's comment, politicians lying. Perish the thought. Hey, Sarah.
And also her comment about shamblers being far from the biggest threat that she faced. For sure. There are other things going on.
Huge foreshadowing moment at the dinner at the mayor's house when the guy turns shambler at the table.
Yeah.
And this is after we've learned that it doesn't take half an hour to turn. You can turn in seconds. So he was recently bitten. And then she realizes how far along into the dinner they are and wonders how it's possible. So on my second read is when I realized how the mayor was running electricity in his house. The shambler wheel that Gideon uses in Summerland.
I was going to say Somerville. I was like, that's not right.
It's Massachusetts. Yes, the Summerland settlement. Were you shocked by the shambler wheel? I mean,
well, the first time I was definitely shocked by the shambler wheel because you don't think that they're going to try to use them and just like try to use them as a natural resource because they're occurring, and they're like, oh, we know that we can get them to turn this wheel and create electricity and illuminate our towns and this kind of stuff. Oh man. Yeah. No, I guess I was really surprised. I just wanted them to be putting them down, but what kind of story would it be if that was that was all you get? I think something. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Cheryl mentioned the guy that got bitten to prove the vaccine works.
Yeah. We can definitely go back to that because I want to talk about that moment.
Yeah, let's do it.
So there's the part in the book where they go to see a lecture for some scientist who has found a vaccine, and because here's the other thing that they have been using like eugenics and these types of things to prove that the survivalist party that the natural order of things is for white people to be superior and for everybody else to serve them, and that the Negro has a natural resistance to turning shambler, right? And so that's how they're justifying using them as, like, you know, to become attendants and all of this. And so Miss Preston takes some girls to see this lecture. And what's interesting about Jane is that she can read, and obviously that's still frowned upon at that point. But she's been educating herself. She's been reading about, like, science and bacteria and how viruses spread, and about antibodies and these things. And they don't have terms for them. She's like, there are little critters that live in my blood.
Right.
And they're like, what are you talking about?
We should mention Jane's mother taught her to read. We didn't talk about Jane's mother. So in the beginning of the story, what we learn about Jane's mother is that she's a white woman who is rumored to have a penchant for field hands, but Jane says that's a lie. We find out more about that later, of course.
Yeah.
Her husband left for the war and didn't come back till 8 years after it was done. But she taught Jane how to read, and not just how to read, but like had her reading Shakespeare and
right,
science journals, and you know, she really educated her. Yes. And Miss Preston's doesn't do any of that. They only teach you how to fight and etiquette, because they don't feel that anything else is necessary for you to fight the dead and serve these ladies as attendants.
Yeah, exactly. And so they go to this lecture where this professor is going to demonstrate that he has used a vaccine and to prove the natural resistance of the Negro, blah, 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 blah. And so this guy comes out. He comes out on the stage in the lecture podium, and Jane, being Jane, can't hold her tongue anymore and is like, wait. But if he turns, what's going to happen to you? Because
he also didn't take the vaccine himself.
He said that he didn't need to take it. And the what's interesting about I guess, like, the way that they treat the shamblers, because we've been talking about fresh ones, is that in the book they make a distinction between how you can tell a fresh one from a fake one, and like the differences in them. Like the ones that are left, you see some of them from like the Civil War. They've got uniforms on, they've got old clothes, they're kind of rotting and they're falling apart, and they move really slowly. But a fresh shambler who's just turned has like almost unnatural speed and abilities, and those are the ones that you have to watch out for. So after Jane asked this professor, one, whether or not he's inoculated himself, and two, what's going to happen if he turns, he just, like, you know, hushes her down and tells her not to worry.
Be quiet,
little black girl in the back. we'll be just fine. And you know, his poor assistant,
Othello.
It makes me so mad. I'm getting angry.
Yeah, poor Othello has to stick his arm in a shambler cage and get bitten. And of course, as suspected, he turns and immediately tears the professor apart. And it's like, we know that they're using bullshit science.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that some of them know it's bullshit science. But then it's like, did he really believe in this vaccine so much?
I feel like he must have. He really put himself at risk, because even if it is bullshit science, for him to be that close to a cage of 3 shamblers and to like have the potential for someone to turn, I think he really believed his vaccine was going to work.
Mm.
I don't know, like, what his control group was for testing.
Well, we learned more. Remember, we learned more in the second book about the vaccine, its development, its effectiveness.
Cheryl,
doctor forces to get bit. Person turns, surprise Pikachu face. No, that's exactly it. Even after she told, and remember, he comes in with, excuse me. Oh no, that's a dinner party.
Mm-hmm.
Where he had no. Yeah, he came in with the old science about it taking time to turn. And they corrected him.
Mm-hmm.
They've been seeing it this whole time.
Exactly. They used to say it takes about 15 minutes for someone to turn.
Half hour
more for someone to turn, when the reality is that it's almost instantaneous now.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't take as long anymore. And so, you know, he thought he had all this time. And so the fact that he's even coming in with old science, you know.
Old science, new shamblers.
And yeah, I felt really bad for poor Othello having to be the public test subject, because my question is, did he not try it before.
That's what I'm saying. What was his control group? Where was
Yeah.
he? Did he? Did
Like
it?
he
Maybe he
decided
tried
to
it and
just
it
go
worked.
live.
Like you just like, okay, I think this is gonna work. I have no idea. And they don't talk about where he tested it. Oh, the
Yeah.
second book is also very good, Cheryl. I'm excited for you to read that.
The
Deathless
second book,
Divide.
Deathless Divide, is really good. And you get, this time it's not just Jane's POV, you get Jane and Catherine's POV.
Mm-hmm.
And it picks up right where the first book ends. And you definitely learn a lot more about the Shamblers, about the vaccine science, um,
About Gideon.
about, yeah, Gideon. And it's, I don't know, maybe we might have to just cover that one too at some
I don't
point.
know. I feel like I want to. It's too much of a spoiler. I feel like because, yeah.
No, I don't mean today. I don't want to
Oh,
spoil it.
yeah. Hello.
Yeah,
Let's
no, I don't want to
totally do
spoil
Deathless
it.
Divide. I'm happy to. Yeah, let's do Deathless
Yeah,
Divide.
I think we should do Deathless Divide in a few
Okay.
months. Where was I going with that?
I don't know. I can't remember. Let's talk about Catherine and Jane's relationship, though.
Yeah. Bitter enemies turn reluctant best friends.
I know. So it's like from the very beginning when you meet Catherine, you're like, who is this proper girl? And why does Jane hate her so much? And Jane's like, she tells you she's like, I hate her because she's pretty.
Yeah, just flat out. Like,
I hate her. She's because she's pretty and she looks like she could pass for white. And you're like, oh, I guess those are. And then it's not only it like if it were that shallow, I would like lose respect for Jane. But it's also that she's also really really good at putting Shamblers down. She's like one of the top students.
Excellent. So she's beautiful. She's smart. She has impeccable manners.
Impeccable shot too.
And she's an impeccable shot. And she is a favorite of Miss Anderson,
who Jane hates, and who
Jane
hates
absolutely
Jane.
hates. Yeah, and Miss Anderson loves Catherine, probably because she can pass. You know, so she's described as having what, like blue or green eyes, I think, blue eyes, I think, and honey colored hair, honey colored curls. She's like always up to date on fashion and everything. Jane's openly jealous. She doesn't even like hide it. She's like, yeah, no, I'm jealous. That's why I hate her. I'm jealous. But again, that's why I love Jane, because she's like, yeah, this is ridiculous that I hate her so much, but whatever, I do.
Yeah, I love Jane and how she owns everything that she does.
When I first started reading it, I knew vaguely what it was about, but I didn't know. Like basically when they get like captured snooping around the mayor's house and then get sent to Summerland, that's not where I saw the story going at all.
Oh no. Where did you think it was gonna go? That's really interesting because that threw me for a loop too, and I was just like, oh, wait, what's happening now?
It seems so much just like this mystery about finding the Spencer family and finding out what the mayor's up to. But I just didn't imagine they were going to be sent to this other settlement, like and like that Baltimore would eventually fall. You find out towards the end that Baltimore falls
because there's no inkling that these settlements, these types of settlements, even really exist. Like when Jane talks about the states, she talks about the lost South.
Yeah,
like the South is completely overrun, and like everybody lives in the more northern climates because during the wintertime the Shamblers go into hibernation mode.
Right, and so they're easy to kind of clear out and
kill, and it's still safe. But not places like the South where it just never gets cold. They're just overrun, and I don't even know that we really talk about they talk about there being communities down there. I remember her mentioning something about the Mississippi.
There's some, like there's a settlement in Louisiana they mention. I think we see it in Deathless Divide, but they don't really talk much about the lost South other than that it's lost. But there were settlements, people tried, but for the most part they were overrun.
And Cheryl brings up a good point. It's like, well, this time when I was reading, I also wondered about the rest of the world because we get a little bit of information about them, like through the newspapers, that and the things that Jane is reading, but we don't really know what's happening elsewhere.
Which we have no idea. Like we have no idea. We don't know what causes. I mean, most media doesn't tell you what caused it. Usually, it's like, oh, we think it's a virus or a fungus or something. Yeah, we have no idea what's going on in the rest of the world. I'm assuming they're overrun by zombies too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really feel like I need to know what caused it.
I don't need to know the cause. I just need to know that it's a threat and it
Yeah.
continues to grow, and it's an evolving threat. It's not like they, if people went from turning within a half hour to like turning almost instantaneously to them, kind of realizing later on in the book that there's a method that they are able to communicate with each other. And what does that mean? You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're not just, it's not that they're not just stupid. It's just that, like the
They're not
comparison they make
completely
it to be.
senseless.
Exactly. Like they're able to like communicate based on some signal that they're putting out. And what does that mean? For communities, it means that nowhere is safe, because where there is a large food source, you're going to attract shamblers.
Right. And then skipping ahead, of course, we find out that you start seeing shamblers from all these different areas. Remember, they said some of them
Mm-hmm.
had trapper furs
Yes.
and, clothing from completely different regions, which means they traveled and came together in groups and then traveled as a swarm. And that's so scary. The idea of them like all just sending out their homing signal
Oh my
and
God.
meeting up
Yes.
to come eat people.
So yeah, and Cheryl saying that the survivalists the claim that the zombies came because of the Civil War, but ignore that other countries that had abolished slavery decades had no zombies.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it just proves that they want to continue their agenda of
Mm-hmm.
white superiority.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about Summerland?
I was just like in my blood. It was just starting to boil because I was thinking about the pastor. So why not?
By all means.
Oh God, I hate him.
He
I'm
was
so
horrible.
cathartic.
So horrible. Um, I guess spoiler, his death was satisfying.
Oh, so satisfying. I was just thinking, I was like, it was so cathartic. There are a couple of deaths in this book that brought me great pleasure, and his was one of them. His was one of them. It kind of reminded me of Arya leaving the Hound to die, except you know that he actually did die.
Right. Right. Because even if he didn't bleed out immediately, he's not going to escape from the shamblers that have breached the wall.
Nope.
And it was so stupid too, that they weren't the people. So in Summerland, basically all the black people had to work as what did they call them? They basically go
There
out
were
to the wall.
patrols.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were
patrols.
the
They go out to the
patrols.
wall but they weren't letting them clear shamblers. Only if they got too close to the wall. And
Hmm.
she couldn't understand why we're not going out and just killing them. And of course, again, we find out later because they need them for their little shambler cages to
Hmm.
keep the electricity going, which to me was like so horrifying.
So scary. I mean, because when you consider that the reason that they kept attracting shamblers was that because they were allowing them to live and continue to congregate there.
Mm-hmm.
Like the more that came, the more that we're giving off that invisible signal. Um, and letting them know that this is where you can come for food. Like we're just
Buffet.
here milling around. Yeah, it's so crazy. Like Summerland is supposed to be this like shining city on the hill where right has been restored and the Negro is back in their proper place of servitude,
Mm-hmm.
and the white people are there and reaping God's rewards with safety and the Lord's word. It's just like a complete city built on bullshit. So a safe place for white people to live and for people who were all about slavery to basically live that life again.
Cheryl mentions Gideon's water wheel plan. So Gideon originally had a plan of building the city near a natural
Mm-hmm.
resource, like
Yep.
coal or water, to keep the wheel going, so that they could have enough electricity to not only power the town, but also have electric fences
Yep.
and things like that. But they had already started Summerland, and they were like, "We like it, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
figure something else out."
Because what else would the rest of those people do?
Yeah, and like the white people there don't work.
Yeah, they don't work. They just like eat the good food in their ration. They get rationed more. They eat the food, and they go to church. They go to church and they talk about and they get constantly reminded that this is the natural order of things,
Mm-hmm.
and how to maintain it. It's fucked up.
Redfern.
Redford, what a complicated character. I like that we get more of him in the second book.
Yes,
I really do, because
absolutely.
I'm trying like the first time we encounter him is when he saves Jane's life.
Mm-hmm.
After all things go, all hell breaks loose at the lecture,
Yep.
and yeah, the professor dies, Othello dies, the Shamblers get out, and now she's like, trying to defend basically because she smuggled in her revolver in her
Yeah,
skirt.
she smuggled in a revolver and miscounted her shots because she fired a warning shot and she fired 2 shots into the professor.
Mm-hmm.
And then realizes too late that, oh shit, I fired all of my shots. Because she was
Yeah.
like, no, I only fired 5. And then she was like, oh, I put 2 in the professor.
Yeah.
Ah, shit, the warning shot.
Yeah. Right. So she's out of bullets, and she's like doing hand-to-hand combat with a shambler that's trying to eat her. And Daniel Redfern.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. He saves her life, throws an knife to her head, and it's the first time that she's ever seen an Indigenous American, and she just flat out stares at him.
Yep, she just stares at him. And I'd also like to point out that she was wearing a hair bonnet and it got ruined by Shambler blood, and it was Catherine's bonnet that she stole out of spite.
Stole out of spite.
She stole out of spite and denied it, and then wore it out with Catherine, because that is who Jane is. One of the things I also love is how Jane knows how to play to these racists, basically. So like when for instance, when she asked the sheriff about seeing the newspaper article, and he's like, you can read, and she's like, oh no sir, I can't read, I just like to look at the pictures. And Catherine is kind of embarrassed, like, that's not how you talk, like, why are you doing that? And she's just like, this is what they expect, so this is what I give them, and it keeps them stupid and unsuspecting, and they underestimate me.
Exactly. And so Jane has learned the power of being underestimated as a key to her survival, and that's one of the reasons why she also clicks so well with Gideon, because she finds out that he's doing the same thing
with
to the
his
sheriff,
limp.
right? It's just like okay, because we are still 1,001, just like Maester, Jesus Christ, Pycelle, Grand Maester Pycelle, pretending to be all feeble and being underestimated. Yeah, so good,
right?
So good.
Yeah, Redfern. We find out. Well, so he seems like. First of all, it comes off like he just hates Jane, and she cannot put her finger on why.
She has no idea why. He just cannot stand her.
Every time he looks at her, it's like with disgust or disdain. And then, obviously, like he helps the mayor kidnap her and Catherine and Jackson. We should talk about Jackson.
Jackson.
Red Jack, her Jane's ex-boyfriend.
Her reluctant love of her life.
Yeah. And also, to talk about Red Jack really quickly, he has a sister who's white passing, and the Spencers take her in so that she doesn't have to go to combat school. Yeah. And that's why they're looking for the Spencer family. I thought this was all like about to be a mystery about the Spencer family. I was dead wrong. But yeah, Red Jack's sister is white passing. And so when the Spencers go missing, that's the family she's living with. So, but yeah, Daniel Redfern lets Red Jack go. And that's kind of when we find out he's not as bad as he seems, or at least he hasn't bought in completely. Because you have to remember too, like he was also sent off to a boarding school, and he's older than Jane. So they had those resettlement schools before the zombies came. They had those resettlement schools for the Native American children. So he was already suffering under these people.
Differently. And that's actually the inspiration for the book. Like if you read like towards the end, Justina Ireland writes about how she visited one of those re-education schools in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. That's one of the oldest ones. And that's where the concept for the book came from, is like sending people away to basically erase their culture, erase their history, and make them as white acting and able to fit into a white world as possible. And then she just kind of extrapolated like what would happen if they were being sent for this other reason, and then there's zombies, and it's just like
I love that. And then there's zombies.
And then there's zombies. Like everything is more interesting and dangerous with zombies. But like I said, it's like they're not front and center. And I like how you go almost to the very end of the first book without even starting to like really learn about the changes of them and how they're evolving and how they're becoming more of a threat. I think that she does a really good job of like keeping it centered on the people, the characters in the story, and you get to learn about Jane and about Jackson, and even like Jackson's sister Lily, you get to learn about a little bit, and to see like kind of what people's motivations are. So yeah, she did a good job. Love it.
Yeah, you don't really get a huge zombie fight until almost the end.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't actually take up that much.
Mm-hmm. It's just like it's really scary. You like that part where where Gideon sends up the flare, and you can see that there's hundreds and hundreds of them.
If you want a really good zombie short based in this universe, the Nightlight podcast. I'm gonna tell you the episode number. I think we mentioned it last time. It's a podcast called Nightlight, and it's all horror fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And Justina Ireland wrote a short story specifically for this podcast called Letters from Home. What episode is it? It's in their first season. I'm gonna look up what episode it is. But basically, you learn that Baltimore has fallen. Towards at the end, you just kind of find like Jane finds out about it, and this short story is from the point of view of Big Sue, and it's basically Big Sue waking up in the middle of the night to screams because zombies have breached the wall.
Yep. So it basically talks about the fall of Miss Preston's, and that's where you get some good death scenes.
and it's scary.
They wake up, it's a terrifying listen, because you just hear like Big Sue. She wakes up, people are screaming all around her, people are turning, and it's just the entire school. This whole time they've been living under the misconception that they are safe and that Baltimore and that whole area is safe, when it's not true.
It's episode 101, actually.
Yeah, Letters from Home on the Nightlight podcast. Definitely check that out. And you after you finish.
Yeah, after you read.
It's in between the two.
Yeah. It's really good. So if you want that really scary, because it has like sound effects and everything too. It's really scary and it's really good. Redfern, who else? Gideon, we should talk about. Gideon, who we find out is Gideon Carr.
Gideon Carr, the mayor's son. And you know what I like about Jane in relation to Gideon. So Jane, what did I text you, that line where she's
I'm a mutton head for a clever boy.
Yes, and she says she loves nerds, and I can relate. So Jane is like, I love this, like she's like getting feelings for him, and she's trying to like rationalize being attracted to him, but like still not really understanding like what his motivations are, and recognizing that he's brilliant, but like why isn't he doing more? She's so funny with it, because then she's like, partially heartbroken because she thinks Jackson is dead, because they haven't seen him since they arrived at Summerland.
And they mention that the sheriff likes to watch people turn.
Yeah. Ooh,
so they just assume they assume that's what's happened to Red Jack, that the sheriff let him get bit and watched him turn and put him down. It was really smart of Jane to force Catherine to pass.
Yeah. Like she knew that was going to be their only way, but also like, why put like, if you have the opportunity to save someone from going through what you know is going to be a miserable experience, why not save them?
Because they probably would have put Catherine in the cat house.
Oh, that's exactly where they would have put her. And I mean, here's the thing about Catherine is that Catherine, they find out. So Miss Anderson, when they're when they're deporting them essentially from Baltimore, Miss Anderson whispers something into Catherine's ear, which we don't find out until much later. And what she tells her is that it's a shame that you were so pretty, because like basically no family would have taken her. She was like a crack shot. She was super smart. She had the best manners. She's like essentially top of her class, which Jane is like, well, we didn't take our final test yet, so we don't know about that. And I love when she does that.
Yeah.
But essentially, Catherine is just too good looking to be trusted as a ladies attendant because we know men are trash and they can't and they couldn't be trusted. Yeah,
she's gorgeous in White Passing. There no women. The women, when they learned about her, would be interested, but once they saw her, were like, nope, she's not coming around my husband.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way.
Which is so unfortunate for Catherine. So she didn't stand a chance the whole time anyway.
Yeah, there she is trying to live, and outperform and to be her very best, only to find out that there's no way that she would have been taken by any family. And so you're right. Remember, Jane Stubbs did she? I mean, even without knowing about the cat house, there, Jane saved her.
Yeah. I was gonna say another attendant we learned briefly about, Maisie, who was at the lecture. It was one of the people who backed Jane up when they were asking questions about the vaccine. And then later on, she sees her out in the shambler field at Summerland as a shambler and has to put her down.
Yeah.
And then we find out it's because Maisie asked the same questions Jane was asking.
Basically, like anyone who was too smart, they just sent them away.
Right. And it's like, it's so stupid. Like, you guys are so committed to being racist that your town isn't even properly protected.
Yeah, you'd think with anybody with half a mind would have been like, oh yeah, we should totally electrify these fences.
And arm these people.
But like, remember the part of the battle and where they're going off to battle to defend the breach in the wall, and the mayor's like, you can't. He's like, okay, give them bladed weapons. We don't want them to shoot us in the back. And we're like, they wouldn't even.
It's like, there is a horde of zombies coming for us, and you still won't give me a gun because you know how badly you have fucked up.
Yeah, exactly. That's how much. I mean, but that's just art imitating life.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's Wusa. You know what's funny is that I watched like the bulk of my reread and re-listen what happened after I watched Exterminate All the Brutes. So I was just like, oh, look at watch it. Those parallels are, yeah. I'll just say the parallel. It's first of all, it's great. Watch it. It's on HBO Max. Plug.
As an aside, just of zombie stories that are really good and aren't just about escaping zombies. There's a movie called The Girl with All the Gifts.
What's that?
And it's about these children whose mothers were bitten and they turned while they were in the womb. So they're born with the ability to think and act totally human, but with also that lust for living flesh.
Whoa!
It's really good. And it follows this one little girl. It's like the facility falls, basically. That's a beginning. It's not like spoiler. The facility falls. And it's this one little girl, and it just asks a lot of questions about, like, what is the world now? And what is it? What are we? And all these. It's a really, really good movie. It was on Amazon Prime, but I think it might be on HBO Max now.
The Girl with All the Gifts, you said?
Yes, The Girl with All the Gifts.
Oh,
it's a really, really good movie. Yeah. So just if you like zombie stories and want one that's about more than just trying to escape. I just saw Cheryl's comment when Jane stepped up in that battle and pretty much told the sheriff to F off. Yeah. She shouted commands and told everybody what to do because she knows how to fight zombies and was not trying to die out there. And that's another thing with these groups they have. They don't even train them.
I mean, Miss Preston's, the girls who went to Miss Preston's school were actually very lucky because a lot of them, they were just like basically like concentration camps where they kept people. They like maybe told them a little bit about, but they were just basically being assigned. They weren't actually being trained on the different ways to kill a shambler.
And Miss Preston's is the only one that was as long as it was. It was 3 years.
Yeah.
Whereas the other schools were barely a year.
Yeah. Turning them out, like basically just using them as bait to keep the establishment alive is what. Which
again is so stupid because all you're doing is creating more shamblers, but racism is stupid. So
yeah, totally. Ugh.
I really liked how the chapter started with the letters to her and then switched to the
And
letters
then
from
switch
her
on the
mom.
second half back to her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jane's mom is reluctant to send her off because, as you know, as a white woman, she's reluctant to send off her only daughter to the training schools. But Auntie, whose name I can't
Auntie
remember,
Aggie.
Auntie Aggie tells Jane that if she is ever going to have stand a chance of getting out into the world and actually living, she should go to the combat school to get away from her mom. Because we find out later that as a baby, Jane's mom tries to kill her when she's about
No.
five
Yeah, when
years
she's
old.
the midwife tries to kill her as soon as she comes out.
As soon as she comes out, and then later
Because
on, Jane's mom tries to kill her
when she's like 5.
When she's 5, she tries to drown her in a bathtub.
And then Jane's father, or her mother's husband, also wants to kill her.
Yeah. So it's so scary. Hold on. Yes, and so basically they've been writing letters back and forth to each other, but Jane hasn't heard anything from her mom. She's sending her letters on a regular basis, but she hasn't heard anything from her. And then we find out when Jane gets on the train to go to Summerland that her mom has been writing her the whole time, but Miss Anderson has been keeping the letters from her.
And that the postmaster was keeping Jane's letters because he was friends with Miss Anderson.
Yeah. So they were preventing any communication. So for all we know, Jane's mom thinks that she's dead, and Jane thought that's that Roseland.
Rose Hill's in Jamaica.
Oh. Going there next. That Roseland has been overrun by zombies, and she finds out like through the course of the letters, through her letters to her mom, for her mom's letters to her that she finally gets to read.
That was really sad too. Like I felt so bad for Jane because she's starting to think either her mother doesn't love her anymore or she's dead and doesn't know which one's worse.
Yeah.
Miss Anderson's such a bitch.
Such a bitch. I can't stand her. Ugh. There's so many characters who make me so angry. Angry.
It was Rose Hill. Rose Hall is in Jamaica. Oh. That's what I was thinking. Have you ever heard of the White Witch of Rose Hall?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you should look that up.
Am I going to get scared?
Maybe. Okay. It's basically she was a white woman who had all her husbands kept dying. She had a plantation in Jamaica. Her husbands kept dying, and she was rumored to do witchcraft. She was raised in Haiti for a little while, and so she was rumored to do witchcraft on her slaves, and they eventually got back at her. I won't go too much into it, but she was a real person, Annie Palmer. It's an interesting story if you're into that. I think I have it here somewhere.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we find out that they've been basically blocking off means of her communication to the outside world, and once Jane finds out, she's determined to basically get back to her mother, and it's not until the very, very, very end that she gets a letter. I think Jackson gives it to her.
Right, because Big Sue escaped with it.
Right, because Big Sue escaped with the letter, and she finds out that not only is her mother still alive, but that she's betrayed by her new husband, who basically kicked her, discovered her secret, which I don't know if we'll tell here, because I feel like it's worth finding.
Yeah, it's worth
that reveals. Yeah, but kicks her out, and now she's on her way to California, to a new place.
And yes, Cheryl, it was very much like Rowan Weber thought to be killing her husband, except I think Annie Hall really was killing them. She was crazy.
Wow.
I mean, Annie Palmer, not Annie Hall. Annie Palmer. Mixing up all kinds of media right now.
Should we talk about the things that we don't want to talk about?
Like what?
Like Jane getting whipped.
I hate it. Like I kept waiting for something to happen for Jane to not get whipped.
Yeah, I thought that someone was gonna come save the day.
I kept thinking Catherine was gonna show up and stop it before I mean, Catherine did end up stopping it because Gideon went to go get her. But
by then she'd already and fucking Bill miscounting on purpose.
Yeah, miscounting the lashes, and it's like, and again, someone finally pointed out, like, hey, like she's really good at killing zombies, and we need her. So like, whipping her to death is going to be really stupid. And it's again like, you guys are just where's your sense of self-preservation? It's just like racism over everything.
Racism over everything. And you see that through everything that they do, just like the way that they like, how are you underfeeding your defensive force?
Right.
Right? How are you not properly arming your defense? But like I said, we mentioned this, is that they were using trying to they thought they figured it all out, right? Like, we know a way to take advantage of the shamblers. Like, we don't want to kill them because we need them to run the electricity in our city, as opposed to being like, actually, let's clear them all out and figure out a different way to make this happen. I feel like it's just like settlement 101 to like settle next to a body of water, and why they didn't do that is beyond me, especially knowing that shamblers can't swim. um it doesn't make any sense to me, unless there was someone else, maybe Gideon was like, oh well, we could use them. I mean, I guess it was working in Baltimore, so they didn't see the reason to like improve on this design.
Right. But that definitely was not Gideon's plan.
No, it wasn't.
People who sit around, this is from Cheryl, people who sit around all day get full rations, but the people who are the sole defense of your town are starved. Yeah, it didn't make sense.
It didn't make any sense. And then it's also that the way that their class system was being organized, right? So you've got like the prostitutes, and then you've got the drovers, who are not slaves, but who are not, in the upper echelon of Summerland society, and how they're being treated. And they don't want to work either, because they see the rest of these white people not working. So why should they have to work out, even if it's like as an overseer or, kind of like the management of their slave system that they have running, but they see themselves not being treated as well either. And the crazy thing about them is that they don't know how to fight at all either.
I was waiting to say that they're
They have
fully
no
useless.
idea how to fight. They're totally
fully useless. And one guy even says like, oh, they're training these Negroes instead of real men like us. And it's like,
he's like, oh, you're going to this government funded school, and
the government's paying for them.
And I was like, whoa, but you. I know you read it. That's the reaction that I mean, like I said, there's art imitating life in all these in all these aspects. But yeah, the misconception that these people are being trained, and then just sending them out to fight. It's just like, how do you guys not have like a basic Shambler education program? Y'all are living in the fucking frontier, and they are in danger, and they're not being killed, and it. Like, what about basic defense? What if the Shambler wheel broke?
Everyone should have some sort of basic defense to just defend themselves.
Yeah.
Because you're living in a world where there are zombies.
Well, when you're in denial of the science that the change can occur almost instantaneously, and
then you're fed the lie that you're safe.
Yeah. Because you want to believe
Baltimore was safe. And it was not. And
you can't blame them, because of course you want to believe that it's safe. Of course you want to believe that you don't have to run anymore. I mean, we see this stuff happening in The Walking Dead too. Like, you get to a place, you think it's finally safe. You think you can finally stop running. You can sleep at night. You're getting food. And then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose, and you have to pick up and run again. And so you never are able to get comfortable. So I understand like the desperate need to believe that you've finally found a place, but let's talk about reality.
Right. Like, I feel like if I was in a world where there are zombies and I was one of these rich folks who can afford to just have someone take care of me, I would still, I don't know, I think my paranoia would take over, and I'd still want to know at least how to protect myself and get away, even if I'm not training every day. But like, I mean, they were fully useless.
Yeah, totally useless. It's like, why didn't Danny learn how to use a sword?
Oh my God, you know how upset I get at the fact that they never made armor for her.
Yeah,
that's gonna bother me until
forever, because it doesn't make sense.
I die.
Like, how are you gonna be a conqueror and not have any combat training? But whatever.
I wanted her to be more like Visenya.
Yeah, me too.
So much, but that's not what today is about. Don't get me started. Why doesn't Danny have armor or any weapons training?
Yeah, it's so crazy. But then to see just like that stratification of society, and how it's actually detrimental to the entire survival of that community. It really is. Like they say, I think Gideon at one point is saying that every man, woman, and child who lives here should be armed and
Yeah.
should know how to use these weapons, and they don't. And so when Summerland falls, spoiler alert, it's their own fault. It's all their own fault. It's such a shame too, because you're like, minus like white superiority, it seems like things are working out fairly well. But then also that they're like, they're doing all the things that come in an oppressive society, right? They're not spreading information. They're not telling people about Baltimore. They're hearing about it in like whispers and snatches, and they don't really know what's going on in the rest of the world because they just think, okay, well, we're here, we're safe. And it's not until Jackson comes back that we find out that there are other towns that are like this, like Nicodemus. Um, and Nicodemus, what's he say about it? He's like, they've got a fence and it works and their back is to the water, so it's a safer place. And you're just like, well, why aren't these kids? And it's not run by the racists either. So,
right. The what are they called? Survivalists.
what's it? I forgot what the other party is. It's survivalists,
egalitarians. Was that it?
Egalitarians? I think the survivalists are the racist guys.
Yeah, they're the ones who they still want like at least a little bit of slavery.
Yeah, they want the old South. They want like balls and like, chivalry
and black people being oppressed.
Black people being oppressed. Basically not to have to lift a finger to do anything because it's not, they don't have the curse of Ham upon them.
Jane was like, what the fuck is that? And then there's so many little indignities, like the fact that they don't even they don't give them cutlery. So they're forced to eat with their hands. It's like all these like little things, just like, and Jane realizes how much better they were treated at
Miss
Preston's. Like they had
even though, yeah, I mean they had that, but even though they were treated well, like when the veil comes crashing down, that Miss Preston is like all about this actually like systematic oppression in order to keep white people on top. It's just like, I mean, I feel like so many times Jane is confronted by the systems around her coming crashing down and revealing themselves for what they actually are, and so she's constantly having to adapt.
She already doesn't like Miss Anderson, but when she hears her use a slur, she's like even more upset because she's just like, really, like this is how you talk about us when we're not around.
Yeah. I feel like it's good for, even though it's not really surprising to Jane, it's good for Catherine to be constantly confronted by it. And you get to know, I like that in the second part of the book, we get to know more about Catherine and actually like the toll that it takes on her having to pass, because people don't always talk about that. Oh yeah, just Cheryl, totally glad that Bill or Bob and everybody else whose names start with a B fucking
even animals need rest. Like, God, crap. What was I about to say about?
We were talking about the toll it takes on Catherine to Kate, good old Kate, to pass as white, because it is stressful for her. Like she's constantly living in fear of being discovered, because obviously it's all a lie, and it'll take one letter getting through from somewhere to let them know that that's the case, and there's that moment where they're back in her house where she's like living in luxury for Somerville, and Jane sees just like how tired she is. Like she has to constantly be around people talking about Black people the way that they do, and like she's like it basically saying that it's really difficult for them to hear them talk about her people because she is Black. Right. She is Black, and she's so it's like
it's not even like she has to
say anything,
right? And it's not even like she can just sit there and not say anything. She has to also pretend to be delighted. She has to pretend it's funny and that she feels that way too, or else she's gonna stand out. And the last thing she needs is to stand out and have any types of suspicions about her.
Because the worst, like as bad as Jane had it, if they found out, like once they find out that she's passing, like it would be even worse for her.
Jane remembers a store owner in Baltimore who was passing as white, and when they found out that he was secretly Black, they had to sneak him out of town because he was going to get lynched. And I think the quote was something along the lines of like they hate nothing more than finding out that they treated a Negro well, or something like that.
Yeah. I remember that.
How cool was it that Jane basically finds out she's famous? Because her hearing about her nighttime excursions with Red Jack to go and kill zombies on the road and protect travelers, They don't go a whole lot into it. We never go out with her while she does it. They don't go a whole lot into it. But then when she gets to Summerland and it's not from Summerland. It's
No,
Redfern.
Redfern who tells her. That's why
Yeah.
she's like, why do you? She asked him straight up. She's like, why don't you like me? And he was like, because you are reckless and selfish and this. And then she finds out that she's called the Angel of the Crossroads because she goes out there and she saves lives.
Yeah, and it's like when you think about it, like of course, like there's like this legend of the Angel of the Crossroads. She's been, probably dressed in something dark and being all mysterious. You know what I mean? Like she's like a superhero basically in that world. And so I thought that was really cool too, to find out that she's famous and doesn't even know it. And it's because she wasn't doing it for that. She just likes to kill shamblers and gets restless and wants to get out the house at night.
Yeah, exactly. She gets tired of being stuck inside and she needs to go out and stretch her legs and actually put her combat training to use.
And that's why she's so good too.
Exactly. She has a lot of real world experience and she doesn't see the point in having this experience and not being able to like make sure your surroundings are safe if you can totally do that. It's actually surprising that they don't talk about like actual patrols like in that area. But if you're trying to maintain the illusion that Baltimore is safe, then what would be the purpose of that?
And remember when they see that little girl shambler, they make mention of it when they get to the mayor's house. And then Jane sees that little girl shambler again later. The patrol never even went and did anything about it.
Yep.
And remember, they see her and then find out there's a small horde behind her.
Yeah. Yep.
So the patrols aren't even going out anyway.
They're not out there because, oh man,
they've moved on.
Frustrating.
They've moved on to Summerland and the rest of Baltimore doesn't know. Terrifying.
So scary. I was going to say something and I can't remember now. Something about, I don't remember. But yeah, I love this book. I want to read it again. I'm excited to read it again. Honestly, because it's just the writing is so good and Jane is such a complex character. Like there are moments where you're like, oh, come on, Jane, what the fuck? But then you understand, like, I mean, once you learn about her background and like understand her actual motivations, like from the fact that she was almost killed twice, once coming into the world, once by her mom, always having to fight it, having to kind of fight to survive, and then like watching her kind of go through these experiences. Because the thing about being the Angel of the Crossroads is that you can't save everybody, Right. So she's witnessed horrifying things.
Yeah, she's had to sit back and watch
people get killed because she couldn't do anything about it because there were too many. Because you can take down shamblers, but even the most experienced fighter after a certain number is putting their own lives in danger. So having to know that, having to live with that on top of like all the rest of everything that she's going through.
The reveals about her home too, and the people there, the things that she saw as a kid, the things she's had to do, which, we're running out of time, so we won't go into all of it, but she's seen some shit.
She has. Like watching the twins get, the one of the two twins get eaten by a shambler, like as a child, and whew, that was horrifying, that whole story, because you just knew the whole time that it was gonna go wrong.
Right.
As soon as you hear like the moans and you see that the woman's like caught up and she recognizes her, and the kids are poking her with the stick, and you just know, like, you just want to reach in and like rewrite, like, no, get out of there.
And then everything that happens when the major comes home.
Yeah. It's terrifying. It's so good.
Yeah.
So good, so terrifying.
So the sequel is called Deathless Divide. Definitely read it.
And the in-between short story is called Letters from Home.
And that's on the Nightlight podcast. So I guess you can get that anywhere you listen to podcasts. Our next book is by N.K. Jemisin, one of our absolute faves. It's called The City We Became.
Love, love, love.
It just won a bunch of awards, too.
Definitely check it out.
It's a really good story. Let me see if I can get a quick description. In Manhattan, a young grad student gets off the train and realizes he doesn't remember who he is, where he's from, or even his own name, but he can sense the beating heart of the city, see its history, feel it, and feel its power. In the Bronx, a Lenape gallery director discovers strange graffiti scattered throughout the city, so beautiful and powerful is as if the paint is literally calling to her. In Brooklyn, a politician and mother finds she can hear the songs of her city, pulsing to the beat of her Louboutin heels, and they're not the only ones. Every city has a soul, some are ancient as myths, and others are as new and destructive as children. New York City, she's got 6. So the city comes alive, and there's other cities, and you have to fight evil forces, and it's really, really fun.
Yeah, based
really,
on
really fun
the short. What was the short story called?
A City Born Great. I think.
A City Born Great. Yeah, that's what I read. I'm excited because I haven't actually read this shit. I've only read A City Born Great, and I've read it a bunch of times because I love it.
It's so good, and I was so happy that she ended up expanding on it and making it into a full story. And it's going to be a trilogy. And I'm really excited to talk to you about this too. So I can't wait for you to read it.
Yeah.
So we will do that in
especially
June.
living here and like just knowing
we're in.
Oh, so great.
We'll do that in July. What date did we pick for that? July 18th.
Yes.
So July 18th, same time, 3 p.m. The title is The City We Became. We'll post. Can you post it in the comments, Nikki?
Yes.
The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. July 18th. So we'll post about that. And then also trivia. We're still doing trivia.
We're still doing trivia. I can't wait for the next one.
So June 27th is our next trivia.
Game of Thrones trivia.
Yes. Did we? I don't know if we quite decided on a theme.
We haven't really decided on a theme, but there's one that we've been kind of throwing around, but I think is going to take a lot more research than we both have time for. And but yeah, we'll let y'all know really soon.
Yeah, we'll let you know. So I'm Tanya.
I'm Nikki.
We are 1,000 Eyes in One podcast, and today is Wine on an Empty Stomach, our speculative fiction book club. So join us in late July for the next book club, July 18th, The City We Became, and next month for trivia.
On what day? Because I forgot. June
27th.
June 27th. Boom. Now it's in the comments.
June 27th at 3 p.m.
Shout out to Cheryl, and thank you for joining our trivia.
Yeah, thank you.
Staying up late on a Sunday night all the way from the UK to play with us. So great.
So yeah, check out, if you haven't read Dread Nation and you just popped in because you want to know about it, definitely read it. Definitely read the sequel, listen to the short story, and then jump on The City We Became. And we're looking forward to doing this again. See y'all soon.
See you next time.